Today on Patch Notes, we're counting down the 10 biggest video game flops of all time, massive budgets, sky-high hype, and the kind of faceplants that make you wonder if anyone actually played the thing before launch. At number 10, Artifact was Valve's attempt to enter the digital card game arena, and absolutely no one asked for it. Released in 2018 while Hearthstone was still dominating, Valve somehow thought players would flock to a $20 card game in a genre where everything else was free. But the price tag was just the start. Artifact was built around the Steam marketplace, meaning every card had a real money value based on demand. So instead of building a deck and having fun, players were juggling economics homework just to compete. This also created a gambling aspect of spending money to open packs, with the hope that you can obtain a rare card to sell for profit. At one point, there was a card in the game that cost more than the game itself. And yeah, it bombed hard. The game launched to mostly negative reception. The player count nosedived, and Valve quietly promised a reboot, Artifact 2.0. And that was eventually canceled too, and in 2021, development was shut down for good. Not every Valve game can be a hit, and this one was their 3-lane disaster. At number 9, we have Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. Kingdoms of Amalur wasn't actually a bad game. In fact, it got solid reviews and has a bit of a cult following today, but this is a classic case of a decent game buried under a mountain of financial delusion. The RPG was developed by 38 Studios, founded by none other than Kurt Schilling, yes, the pro baseball pitcher. Schilling had big dreams of building a studio that would rival Blizzard. The problem was the budget. The game reportedly cost around $30 million to make, with $28 million fronted by EA, but that's not even the real kicker. The state of Rhode Island loaned 38 Studios $75 million to bring game development jobs to the state, and in return, the studio delivered a modest-selling RPG, couldn't pay back EA, and completely defaulted on the loan with Rhode Island. Within months, 38 Studios was bankrupt, and Rhode Island taxpayers were left holding the bag. Kingdoms of Amalur may have been alright, but financially, it was a total reckoning. At number 8, we have Too Human. Too Human spent over a decade in development and still somehow felt like it needed more time. Developed by Silicon Knights, it was supposed to be a groundbreaking sci-fi action RPG. Instead, it turned into a lesson in what not to do in game development. The combat was awkward, the camera had a mind of its own, and the story was buried under layers of techno-Norse nonsense. Despite costing somewhere between 60 to 100 million, it sold under 700,000 copies, nowhere near what it needed to break even. And to make matters worse, they were sued by Epic Games for misusing the Unreal Engine and were ultimately ordered to recall and destroy unsold copies of Too Human. Yes, legally erased from existence. That's one big way to flop. Number 7, we have E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari. It came out in 1982. This is the original video game disaster. Atari secured the E.T. movie license for a fortune, gave one guy 5 weeks to develop it, and expected a holiday miracle. What they got was a confusing, frustrating mess that left kids everywhere asking, "Can I return this?" Atari manufactured 5 million cartridges and sold about 1.5 million before the returns started pouring in. Which the fact that this sold 1.5 million just shows how powerful licensed products can be. Millions of unsold copies were literally buried in a New Mexico landfill because throwing them in the trash wasn't dramatic enough. The flop was so bad, it helped crash the entire US video game market in 1983. E.T. didn't just phone home, he took the whole industry with him. At number 6, we have Babylon's Fall. Imagine teaming up with Platinum Games, masters of stylish combat, and somehow releasing a game that's this boring. That's Babylon's Fall, a live service RPG from Square Enix that managed to look like a PS3 game and play like a mobile one. It launched in 2022 to a peak player count of around 1,200. Within weeks, it dropped to single digits. Literally fewer than 10 people were playing this thing at one point. It had fewer players than Tic-Tac-Toe Online, and yes, that is a real game, you can go check. The budget was never made public, but come on, you know it wasn't cheap. With numbers like that, it wasn't just a flop, it was a full-blown 5-alarm dumpster fire. Despite promises to improve the game, Square Enix shut down the servers just a year later. It's like they forgot the first rule of live service games. People have to want to play them. Coming in at number 5, we have Anthem. This game doesn't really need an introduction. Anthem was BioWare's attempt at Destiny-style looter shooter, except they forgot to add the fun part. It had gorgeous visuals, great feeling flying mechanics, and one of the best Iron Man fantasies ever, and that's about where the compliments end. The missions were extremely repetitive. I'm talking there was about 2 or 3 different mission types that you would just repeat ad nauseum. The loot system was completely broken. It basically didn't work, and players spent more time staring at loading screens than actually playing the game. It launched with high expectations and immediately fell flat. The budget for Anthem is estimated to be somewhere between $100 to $200 million, and that's not even counting marketing. It sold around 5 million copies, and somehow that still wasn't enough to keep it afloat. EA and BioWare promised to fully overhaul with what's called Anthem Next. That was quietly canceled in 2021, and Anthem was left to rot in digital purgatory. It wasn't just a flop, it was BioWare's public midlife crisis. Coming in at number 4, we have Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. Rocksteady, the studio behind the legendary Batman Arkham trilogy, spent almost a decade working on Suicide Squad. And what we got was a live service looter shooter with a battle pass and AI teammates that repeat the same generic, corny lines every 90 seconds. It was supposed to be this bold new chapter in the DC universe, and instead we got this generic, always online shooter where you spend more time fighting purple weak spots than, actually killing the Justice League. The game also gave characters that normally wouldn't use guns. Like why is Captain Boomerang using an assault rifle instead of, a boomerang? It all just felt weird and lazy, like the devs were trying to force every character in this generic looter shooter mold just so they could make this game work and force it together. So many strange decisions piled up, and the whole thing came off like a soulless cash grab. Honestly, it's astounding this game came from the same studio that gave us the Arkham trilogy. The game flopped so hard that within a few months it had fewer than 1,000 concurrent players on Steam. And remember, this was supposed to be a major pillar of Warner Bros. Gaming strategy. Oops. Coming in at number 3, we have Skull and Bones. This is Ubisoft's long-delayed pirate game that was in development for over 11 years and burned through more than $200 million in cost, and somehow still launched as a shallow, awkward mess. It started life as a Black Flag spinoff, then it became an MMO, then a PvP naval combat game, then something else. By the time it finally released in 2024, no one, including Ubisoft, seemed to know what it was. It's actually kind of interesting because you can see how this guy greenlit in the first place. The naval combat in Black Flag was awesome, and turning that into a full multiplayer game could have worked, but doing just naval combat, no matter how polished, gets old really fast. And with over 11 years of development time, it's clear this thing went through reboot after reboot. So why didn't Ubisoft just cancel it? It's pretty simple. They couldn't. They had a deal with the Singaporean government that involved subsidies, and part of that agreement required them to release a new IP. Sound familiar? Critics slammed its lifeless world and repetitive gameplay, and players bounced off of it almost immediately. It's technically still online, but it feels more like a ghost ship than a game. Coming in at number 2, we have Redfall. Arcane Studios, the minds behind Dishonored and Prey, dropped Redfall in 2023, and fans were left wondering what on earth happened. On paper, it had everything: vampires, co-op, a cool setting, and then it actually came out. What players got was a bland, clunky combat, broken enemy AI, no offline mode, and a constant feeling of, wait, this is from Arcane? Critics torched it, players dipped almost immediately, and Xbox had to jump into full-on damage control mode. The budget is estimated to be as high as $150 million, and yet its peak concurrent player count on Steam was just 1,500 players. That's not just a flop, that's a wooden stake through the heart of Xbox 2023 lineup. Even Phil Spencer publicly admitted that the game was a failure, that they probably shouldn't have released it when they did, or saw the direction it was going much earlier in the development cycle. Redfall wasn't just a miss, it was an embarrassment on a AAA scale. Number 1 needs no introduction. Concord is Sony's answer to a question no one asked. What if Overwatch had less charm, no identity, boring gameplay, and characters that made you question who this was even for? The trailer dropped in 2024 and was instantly torched online. Generic heroes, cringe dialogue, and a presentation so soulless it felt like it was written by middle management trying to be cool. The budget, rumored to be anywhere between $200 and $400 million, and its all-time peak player count on Steam, just 697 players. This was supposed to be Sony's next big thing. They invested huge into both this studio and the game, and the result was one of the most baffling examples of a leadership team completely out of touch with what gamers actually want. What makes this flop so wild is that it had everything going for it. Sony backing? Check. Massive budget? Check. Plenty of development time? Check. And yet they couldn't even break 1,000 players on launch. Sony shut down the servers and issued full refunds within just 2 weeks of the game launching. This wasn't just a flop, it was the king of flops, and it certainly belongs at number 1. Nothing else even comes close. So there you have it, 10 flaming wrecks that prove even the biggest studios with the biggest budgets and the boldest promises can still completely miss the mark. Thanks for watching. Comment down below if you think I missed a game. And hey, if you're working on a $300 million game right now, maybe test it before you release it. Just a thought.